information event on the Skłodowska-Curie Doctoral Network Call 2023 with a focus how Swiss institutions can participate. My name is Isabel Spüler and I do together with Véronique Saudet today's event. So first of all, I would like to set again the purpose of today's information event. We would like to introduce the doctoral networks and also how Swiss partners can participate in them. We will also have a part where we discuss the aspects to consider in the proposal preparation. And afterwards, we have a testimonial from a successful applicant of the Doctoral Network Call 2021. Thus, someone who applied and got funding from the Swiss government. You can always write down your questions into the chat, and we will answer them at the end of the session after we stopped the recordings. So with that, I would like to start, first of all, who is Euresearch? So we are here to inform and guide you about the European funding opportunities. So basically about Horizon Europe. Our services are free of charge. We have a network, so we have 10 offices in the regions, and they are basically the first entry point for your applications. So let's say when you're at the EPFL, there is the research office at EPFL, but there are in all the different regions, there is a support team in the region as well, who knows about the specific properties in implementing a project in this place or institution. We also have company advisors. That is also very important for the doctoral network, how the non-academic sector can participate. Now, Véronique and myself, we are actually located in the network office in Bern. We are now in the network office. So here at the network office, all the so-called national contact points, the advisors on specific parts of the program, are here to support you, and especially when you have specific questions on the program itself. So we are 3 in our team, Sibylla Martinelli, Véronique Saudet, and myself. We are the 3 national contact points in Switzerland for the MSCA. So first of all, about MSCA, the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Action. In general, it can be said that all the different types of action want to promote the mobility of researchers. It's about training of skills to increase the capacity, and in this way to support the career development of researchers. There is this international dimension. So we see through this mobility, we want MSCA wants to increase the international dimension in a project, and very important, all MSCA are completely bottom up. So there's no predefined topic, but it's open to all domains of research. Now, specifically today about the MSCA Doctoral Networks. What it's all about. In the doctoral network, there are a network of institutions applying that want to train a highly skilled doctoral candidate. So they basically want to foster a new generation of researchers. In this network, the aim should be not just a research project, but it's a lot about a training program to train a new generation of researchers for a specific topic or challenge. In a doctoral network, it is very important that the collaboration across countries, but also across sectors and disciplines is promoted. So when you apply for doctoral network, it's not just about a research project, but a lot about training. So I would like to here again emphasize the aim of a doctoral network. As I said already, is to train a next generation of researchers. Is to increase the career perspective of researchers and to enhance the collaboration among the partners across country. It's a great networking opportunity as well.
It's about cooperation and the transfer of knowledge across countries and institutions, across sectors. So the doctoral networks is there to train innovative researchers. It provides funding for a doctoral training network, and it's a combination of the research program and a new type of PhD program. There are different modalities, and I will go into that in a minute. But in general, you have 4 years for the project implementation, and it's now very new in this year's call. There's an exception that a joint doctorate can be implemented in 6 years. All fellows have to be enrolled in a doctoral program, in a doctoral training. The call just opened on the 30th of May, and the deadline is on the 28th of November at 5 p.m. So there are 3 different modalities, and I would like to introduce them here. So there's the regular doctoral network. This is the standard option most apply for. There is a maximum of 540 person months. So this is also an increase to the earlier calls in Horizon Europe. So this means you can recruit 15 PhD candidates for 36 months each. It is basically the most common and the easiest to implement, the regular doctoral network. Then we have the joint doctorate. Same 540 person months. What's very new now is that the project can go for 6 years, and the PhD candidate can have a fellowship of up to 48 months. This is a big step many have asked for, because a PhD normally takes more than 3 years. So here in joint doctorate as an incentive, they have extended this length of a fellowship that is now possible to have up to 48 months. In a joint doctorate, you need to have a joint degree for these fellows. And not just a joint degree, but also a joint governance structure has to be proposed, and of course, a joint supervision for the researcher. Then we have the industrial doctorate. This is the 3rd modality. Same here, 540 person months. There's at least one entity from the non-academic sector involved. And the specificity here is that a PhD candidate has to spend at least 50% of their fellowship time in the non-academic sector. Also here, it's mandatory that there's a joint supervision of the researchers by the different institutions, so the non-academic and the academic institution. I want to emphasize again the training activities. So it is important that the complementarities of the participating organization is exploited. So it is not a normal PhD program, but it's really about sharing knowledge at workshops and conferences. So it's not just about research skills, but also transferable skills for every PhD candidate in order to promote their career development. Secondments is also something that can help increase the training in a doctoral network, so that you can add secondments intersectoral, so across the different sectors, academic, non-academic, and to have international secondments. In the standard doctoral network, the secondment period can only be 1/3 of the entire fellowship time. In the industrial doctorate and the joint doctorate, since last year, there is unlimited possibilities for secondments. This means a PhD candidate can be employed throughout the fellowship in one institution and be seconded to another institution more than 1/3 of their fellowship time, what is actually necessary sometimes in a joint or industrial doctorate. So please consider how you want to include the possibilities of secondments for the PhD so that they can also increase their knowledge and skills. Now, about the researchers that are recruited within a doctoral network. So when you are successful in this proposal, you will make a call, and these researchers that you will employ, they must be PhD candidates. Yes, they should be in this position that they can start a PhD. They have to be enrolled in a doctoral program. They can be of any nationality, but they have to comply with the mobility rule. This is a central aspect of all MSCAs, the mobility rule. So the mobility rule says that the researcher that you would employ, recruit, should not have lived or worked more than 12 months in the country of the hosting institution in the 3 years prior to the recruiting date. So this is the first beneficiary that recruits the fellow. So let's say there is a German institution that wants to recruit an MSCA fellow. This person should not have spent more than 12 months in the 3 years before the date of recruitment. So you cannot just simply employ someone who did already a master in the same institution. This is in order to promote the mobility of researchers. I want to now also introduce two additional rules. The first one is the 40% rule. So in this rule, it says that not more than 40% of the European funding, so financial contribution, should be allocated to one beneficiary. And this is important also to take into account the country correction coefficient. Our information event is for Swiss participants. So Swiss participants don't have to care so much about this because we don't receive any European financial contribution, but this is something to keep in mind. So there's no unbalance within the cohort. So in the numbers of recruited PhD candidates. What is also important is the resubmission restriction. This is new in Horizon Europe. So proposals with a score less than 80 in the previous call, meaning in the Doctoral Network 2022 call, they are not allowed to be resubmitted. And resubmission means that there is a high degree of similarity from the previous proposal. So this will be assessed by the REA and has to be justified. Now I would like to go into more the details of the consortium. So who is actually submitting a doctoral network project? So these can be universities, research institutions, businesses, research infrastructures, NGOs, startups. So it's quite diverse. There are different types of modality how an institution participates. And this depends on the status of their country very much. So an institution can participate as a beneficiary or as a coordinator. An institution can participate as an associate partner or as an associate partner linked to a beneficiary. So the beneficiaries signed the grant agreement, also the coordinator. Beneficiaries must recruit at least one PhD candidate. So you cannot be a beneficiary in a doctoral network without recruiting a PhD candidate. Beneficiaries offer training and they can be involved in management. Associate partner contribute to the implementation of the project. They do not sign the grant agreement. They can submit a letter of commitment. It's no longer mandatory, but it is basically recommended. But they cannot recruit PhD candidates. So in a consortium, you need to have at least 3 entities from 3 different EU member states or associated countries. And there must be at least 1 beneficiary from an EU member state. The 2 other rules I introduced before, so that is 40% budget rule and the resubmission restriction. The financial aspect. So here you see the unit cost per person months. So basically the budget is calculated automatically. You see here there is on the one side, you see the contribution for every recruited MSCA fellow, for every recruited PhD candidate. So there is the living allowance. This is 3,400 euro multiplied by the country correction coefficient. There is the mobility allowance, and there's family allowance if this PhD candidate is married or has a child. And also when the status changes during the fellowship, this can be adapted. Then we have here in the list the long-term leave allowances and the special need allowances. These are in cases when there is, for instance, a sick leave or parental leave, and as well if one of the recruited researcher would need a special need allowance, this is an additional application actually. So this is the contribution per month. So basically it is 3,400 euro multiplied by the country correction coefficient of the beneficiary, plus the 600 euro mobility allowance, and maybe the family allowance per month. And then we have the institutional contribution. We see here 1,600 euro for the research training and networking cost every month, and 1,200 euro management and indirect contribution every month. So this is per recruited researcher. So now it's very important that we address the situation of Switzerland in a doctoral network. So Switzerland is currently considered a third country not associated to Horizon Europe, and this has strong implications. So Swiss institutions cannot participate as beneficiaries, so they cannot coordinate. It also means they cannot sign the grant agreement and they cannot recruit MSCA fellows, so they cannot receive European funding. Swiss institutions must participate as associated partners. So again, recapitulate, so Swiss institutions contribute to the implementation of the project. They do not sign the grant agreement. They do not receive funding from Europe. They can submit a letter of commitment that describes their contribution. This is no more mandatory, but we strongly recommend this. Now, very important, when a proposal is successful, they can receive direct funding from the Swiss government. This means they can recruit additional PhD candidates. These are not official Marie Curie fellows, but so-called SERI-funded MSCA Doctoral Network grantees. Okay, so this is very important. The Swiss government supports financially that the Swiss institutions in a successful doctoral network can recruit also PhD candidates. And also very important to repeat, Swiss institutions can lead work packages, except the management work package, but they can lead work packages. There's sometimes confusion about it, but please keep this in mind. So the PhD candidates are funded by the Swiss State Secretariat for Education, Research and Innovation, SERI. And it's very important that they are the same conditions, so the same eligibility rules, same funding conditions. You should also respect the mobility rule when you recruit these SERI-funded grantees. Very important for you to keep in mind, they can be on top of the European budget. So they are in addition to the 540 person months. So the maximum EU contribution is 540 person months. This is equal to 15 PhD candidates for 3 years. And you can have, in addition, the SERI-funded MSAD and grantees. So now I would like to quickly repeat what it means. For the standard option, you can have this 540 person month plus the SERI-funded grantees, so 1 or 2. They are is the easiest to implement, and the secondments can be anywhere. So it means official MSCA fellows can be seconded to Switzerland, and from Switzerland you can second these SERI-funded grantees to any other beneficiary. For the joint doctorate, so we have heard there's now this higher incentive that you can have a project implementation of 6 years and fellowship up to 4 years. It is very important to keep in mind that this is a modality that is easier to implement for the Swiss institutions perspective, because you need to have a degree, the European perspective, from 2 institutions in European member states or associated country. So if there is an MSCA fellow that wants to get a multiple degree, it's not possible to have it just with a European member state and a Swiss one. It would be, they need to have basically 2 European one plus the Swiss. So there are 3 institutions involved for the official MSCA fellow for a joint degree in order to comply with the European rule. However, for the SERI-funded grantee, they can basically just add another European institution for the joint degree, because from the SERI perspective, it is enough to have a joint degree with 1 European member state institution. Then we look at the industrial doctorate. So because it's no longer necessary to have consecutive recruitment, you can second a PhD candidate from Switzerland to any other European non-academic institution. So it's very important to keep in mind the Swiss SERI-funded grantee has to be all the time employed at a Swiss institution in order to receive Swiss funding. So if you want to do an industrial doctorate for a Swiss candidate or a SERI-funded grantee, then this person should be employed all the time in Switzerland and then can be seconded more than half of the time of the fellowship in another European country for the non-academic sector, for instance, or for the academic, depending who is the employing institution in Switzerland. So this is also possible to implement. Now, I would like to talk about in case Switzerland is associated to Horizon Europe before the call deadline. So nobody knows when the status of Switzerland will change. Therefore, I wanted to address this. So reference date is the call deadline. So let's say Switzerland is then associated to Horizon Europe before the 28th of November. The Swiss partner can no longer be on top of the European budget. Okay, so there will be a change. The Swiss partner would no longer be an associated partner, but a beneficiary. And there's no longer a legal basis to fund Swiss associated partner. However, and what is most probable is if the change in the status is after the call deadline, there is a legal basis to still fund the Swiss candidates. So I would like to repeat, if there is a change in the status before the call deadline, you need to be alert and adapt the proposal that the Swiss candidates are within the budget. It's very difficult to say what will happen, but of course it's important to follow what is happening in the association status. Most probably this will not happen so quickly until the call deadline, but please keep in mind, if the status changes before the call deadline, you have to adapt your proposal. And then you submit after the call deadline. Let's say the status changes until there's a grant agreement. It is okay because Swiss government will guarantee to fund those additional PhD candidates. I would like to also point here to the official dedicated website from the Swiss State Secretariat for Education, Research, Innovation from SERI. Here they have the official documents also, including the FAQ, also describing how this fellow should be called, or any update will immediately be published on this website. So if you have any doubts, please also check in addition this website. And with that, I would stop my part of the presentation. And I'm very happy to give the microphone basically to Véronique Sordet, who will continue about the important aspect in the proposal writing.
Thank you very much, Isabelle. I would like now to talk a little bit what you need to consider when you prepare a DN proposal. First of all, please keep in mind that you need 3 main documents for your proposition. First of all, the work program. In the work program, you will find information a little bit like Isabelle just explained you, how the DN works, how the different categories you can find into a DN action. And it covers all the MSCA actions. Now, to guide you through your proposal application, you can work with the guide for applicant. In the guide for applicant, there is a little bit of repetition of what should, how the action works, but also further information on how the proposal should be submitted. But then once you will start working on your proposal, you can use the template, and in the template, you can find the different instruction from the different part of your proposal. But how does it look like exactly? First of all, what you have to do, first step, you go to the Funding and Tender Opportunity portal. This is going to be your portal for the submission. Here already you should know into which doctoral network you would like to apply for. Is it a normal one, an industrial doctorate, or a joint doctorate? Also, in this portal, you will have a section with all the important documents, as the 3 I mentioned, but also other ones for your submission. So once your coordinator will open this call, there are several parts for your application. So the part A is directly into the portal. It's more the part with the administrative information, such as all the beneficiary, the participants' information, address, etc. You also can find here the budget, and you also can find here, for instance, the ethics part. So this is more the administrative part. Then you have the part B. Part B is divided into 2 parts. The part B1, which is the one that is going to be evaluated. What is good with the MSCA action is that you know in advance the evaluation criteria, and they apply to this part B1. This part B1 is divided in 3 parts: the excellence, the impact, and the implementation part. Additionally to that, you have the part B2. And in this part B2, this is where you have additional information on the beneficiaries, such as the excellence of the institution, for instance, etc. So administrative information is for part B, and more information of the beneficiary is in the part B2. Also in this part B2, this is where you can add your letter of commitment. What is important now to consider when you prepare a DN proposal? First of all, you may be in the stage now when you do not have yet a network. I will show you after. There are several platforms existing where you can profile yourself and find your network partners. But your network partners is really important to have a strong network for submitting such a proposal. The recruitment strategy is an important part also, and this is also going to be evaluated. It has to be very clear and transparent and respecting some rules, like including Euresearch. Euresearch is a portal where you can publish the MSCA job positions. Isabel mentioned quite a lot the training importance in the DN proposal, but local training opportunity can be mentioned also here. Try to be active with your communication. And this is especially true now as the case for Switzerland as an associated partner. You should be in touch quite closely to your coordinator and know a little bit what's happening during the proposal submission, because, and I will repeat that after, you will not have access yourself as a Swiss-based applicant to the portal. The deliverable and milestone, consider them well at this stage also, not only because they are part of the evaluation, but also because when you will have to implement the project, this is what you will have to deliver to the European Commission. And be careful, we have now with Horizon Europe some new mandatory deliverables. Can call them, for instance, management deliverables, such as the plan for dissemination, exploitation, communication, the gender equity plan, the data management plan, all those deliverables that are not directly linked to the science, but more to the management of the project, are now mandatory. And by putting them carefully in your proposal, you also demonstrate that you know the rules. So how not to include a Swiss partner? So describe why the Swiss partner is important for the impact of the DN. So you should, in the proposal, put it as the little project as the other ones. So the project of the PhD candidate should also be included. But every time you have the Swiss partner mentioned, you can, for instance, add a footnote that they are paid by the Swiss government. Also, it's not because it's not paid by the EC that you should not put the PM and number of candidates. That all should be in the proposal. And Isabel mentioned that already, but I will also mention it here. You can already give them the official name, which is SERI-funded MSCA DN grantees. The budget, you can also be included in the letter of commitment, which is newly not mandatory this year, but highly recommended. This is what you have in UB1 now. And you can also add here, it's not because we are associated partner that we cannot be in these different tables about the recruitment tables or the individual research project, but each time, again, mention that it's financed by the Swiss government. This is the letter of commitment. We at Euresearch have a template about the letter of commitment. We can share this template with you. For that, please just write us an email and we can send you this template for the letter of commitment. So when I talk about the communication with your consortium, it is again important to mention that we as Swiss associated partner do not have access to the portal. Only the coordinator and the beneficiary have. So the project related communication need to be forwarded by the coordinator, meaning that you will have to provide the coordinator with the different information, and it will be up to the coordinator to include them into the portal. Remember, I mentioned before that we have some platforms for you to profile yourself, to find your network, and those are the 3 different platforms I would like to mention to you. First of all, there is a partner search on the Funding and Tender Opportunity portal. There's also a matchmaking platform where you can also here profile yourself and see who are the different institutions willing to build up a DN consortium. And also Euresearch provides some partnering tools in order for you to connect with some institutions. So how we can support you? One of the Euresearch services is to make proposal review. But in this case, since we are not associated, we propose review nevertheless, but with a focus on the description of the Swiss partner. This means that we check in the proposal if you, as a Swiss-based partner, you are properly implemented into the proposal. Basically, it means all the tips I provided you before. But if your coordinator is in another country, in France, for instance, he can ask for a proposal review to his country NCP, namely in this case the French NCPs. And I put you here the link to all the NCP contacts all around Europe. With that, I finished my presentation. I hope that was helpful for you to have already an idea on which are the next steps for your submission. And I give the floor back to Isabelle.
Thank you very much, Vero. Now we would have the testimonial. Unfortunately, Jan Schmutz did not join yet, and I just therefore suggest maybe we answer some of the questions that you wrote already in the chat before we continue with the testimonials.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I will start with the question I had for you part. So Isabelle, will this DN program also be offered in 2024?
Yes, there will be another call also next year.
And is it mandatory that the industrial partner are from EU? Can they rather be from Switzerland?
No, you can of course also have an industrial partner in Switzerland. Now, if you want to have industrial doctorate with a Swiss academic and a Swiss industrial partner, there's no international dimension in it. Of course, you can do that. It's more of a question whether this makes sense in the proposal. You have to convince the reader evaluating the proposal that the contribution of Switzerland makes sense to the entire project. And if you have a PhD candidate doing a PhD just within Switzerland, this is maybe more difficult to justify.
Okay, so we are clear that as a Swiss entity, we cannot be beneficiary, but only associated partner, right?
Yes, of course, there's still this possibility to claim deemed to be essential, but this is a high risk. So this is a possibility sometimes institutions from third country, when they have a special infrastructure or method they can provide, they play this card to be deemed to be essential, but then this has to be recognized. And since there is this guarantee that CERI funds these PhD candidates, we strongly recommend to submit as associate partner from the beginning.
And if Switzerland is an associated partner, can Switzerland recruit PhD?
Yes, they can, but these are funded by the Swiss Secretariat. They are not official MSCA fellow, meaning they cannot call themselves MSCA, like you cannot call yourself ERC when you apply for SNF transitional measure, but they can call themselves CERI-funded MSCA DN grantees, and they have the same conditions, the same financial contributions.
What exactly means intersectoral, international for secondment? Does both have to be fulfilled or only one of both criteria, and how intersectoral does it have to be?
So this is not a rule. This is a strong recommendation. This is the aim of the doctoral network, to have this mobility across countries and across sectors, across disciplines. But there are funded doctoral networks where secondments are within the same sector. So this is really, it has to make sense for the entire project. So don't artificially include some secondments across sectors if it doesn't make sense to the overall objective of the doctoral network. But this is a strong recommendation to consider how you can include training in a non-academic sector.
Okay. And can a company be the beneficiary in an industrial doctorate?
Or can you repeat again?
Sorry, can a company be the beneficiary in an industrial doctorate?
Yes. So actually beneficiaries are really independent of the sector. Also for the Swiss part, very important. I think many Swiss companies can't believe that they receive Swiss government money for a project, because this is not how we are used to fund companies, but because this is really a specific measure, and they basically apply the same rules. So Europe funds companies, so companies can be beneficiary for the European funding,
And in Switzerland, also companies receive funding from the Swiss government. So they are equal, they have the equal rights as any academic institution.
So the CERI funding does not count when calculating the 40% rules for other institutions?
No. So it is, it is important that this 40% is within the European, it's the European budget, but it is also important, CERI has to apply the same rules. So now you have 15 MSCA fellows, let's say, for 36 months. Then it does not make sense to have, for example, 5 CERI-funded PhD candidates. So it is very important. The 40% rule for Europe does not consider the Swiss participation. However, for CERI, it is important that the overall has to make sense. So the balance between the European number of candidates and the Swiss candidate should also not exceed this 40%.
Okay, and is it correct that the maximum number of the CERI PhD fellowship is 2?
I would say this is like a guideline. It is, as I said, at the end, the entire proposal has to convince the reader in order to be successful. And imagine there is a proposal where you have, let's say, 4 Swiss institutions in a consortium, and all of them want to recruit 2 PhD candidates. It makes 8, and there are 15 European. This doesn't look at all balanced. So here it is very important to keep in mind that this Swiss partner would be as if they would be associated part, as if they would be beneficiary, you would also not play the card to recruit, let's say, 5 PhD candidates, right? So it is at the end not a strict rule, but something that has to make sense in the overall proposal.
Okay. And what relationship is the number of Swiss PhD fellowship to the number of PhD in EU doctoral network? This is a little bit what you explained,
yes.
right?
It is, as I said, it's very difficult to just give here now concrete numbers. As I said, it depends how many Swiss institutions are involved. If there's just one Swiss institution, then maybe 3 would also make sense. So please make it a proposal that can convince the reader that it makes sense.
And to clarify, on a joint doctorate, the CERI-funded PhD still needs to get into a joint agreement with one European doctoral schools in addition to the Swiss school, correct?
So for a joint doctorate, for the joint degree, if I understood the question correctly, is that the MSCA fellow needs to have the degree from 2 European institutions. And if there is a Swiss institution that wants to join, this is in addition. So there are 3 institutions that I find quite challenging to implement.
Is there a change of status on the Association of Switzerland to Horizon Europe? This puts Swiss researchers in a quite bad situation, isn't it?
So for the change of status on association from Switzerland to Horizon Europe, I think the good thing compared to UK is that it's very clear. At the moment, we are not associated. At the moment, we clearly apply as associated partner. However, if the status changes before the call deadline, you need to be ready to adapt quickly. So the question is always the probability about this. And when you have seen things seems to be rather slow at the moment, and there will not be a rapid change in the association status. But yes, this is always an additional aspect to consider. And yet to include a Swiss partner, of course, enlarges the cohort of PhD students that you can include in a network. So I just quickly want to stop. I see there are many questions. Thank you all to be so active. I'm very happy to see on the screen now our testimonial. Hello, Professor Jan Schmutz from University of Zurich. Can you hear us?
Oh, I hope there's no.
Yes.
Yes,
All good.
wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining. We have been a bit ahead of time in our schedule. The screen is if you want to share your presentation with your experience in applying and being successful in the DN Call 2021. So for all of you, Professor Schmutz is a professor in psychology at the University of Zurich, interested in team work. And there is in special conditions as well, but he will explain a bit more also in the example of the doctoral network. Thank you so much for joining today.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present, our work, and also a little bit the whole way and the road, how we got to this grant. And here we go. So I prepared a few slides. So currently I am an SNF professor at the psychology department of the University of Zurich. I started last year in September with my Excellenza grant, which is of course independent from the European grant. And also, as you will see later on, we started with the European grant way earlier. And so a lot of things happened parallel. And today I would like to show you a little bit how we got here, how I managed also with different grants and resubmissions. And finally, also what are some positive aspects and some, maybe some challenges that I faced on the way. So our project is called Tools for Teams, and research training to design and implement tools supporting safe teamwork in healthcare. So my background is organizational behavior, work organizational psychology, and in the last 10 years, I worked a lot with healthcare teams, and my main focus is actually teams in extreme environments. So myself and my team, we research teams under stress, team resilience, and therefore we did and still do a lot of work in hospitals with emergency medical teams, but also other domains like firefighting, police, or we have even projects with Antarctica expedition teams and some more fancy collaboration with the European Space Agency and NASA with analog astronaut teams. So this call here is focused on the medical part, so medical teams, and we submitted, or we got it from the call, the Doctoral Network 2021. And you can see the toolsforteams.org is our webpage, where you can find all the information with all the partners and our focus, so in case you are interested in. First, briefly about the project itself. So generally, Tools for Teams is a project that should contribute to safer and more effective care by studying like innovative approaches, tools that teams could use then to actually improve teamwork. And we collaborated with partners from all over Europe in different domains, different healthcare domains. And here below, you can see just two of the main work packages. So generally, it's all about tools that should make collaboration easier. And that includes tools like smartwatches or speech recognition, virtual reality in the acute care work package, or my project will be about developing a tool for teams to debrief cases, events. So what does that mean, actually debriefing or reflection in a team, and how can we improve this? Because we see more over and over again that especially in healthcare, teams don't have much time to actually do debriefings and reflect, but still it is a very valuable tool to actually improve and learn. And then on the right side, you see the work package 5 is more on chronic decentralized care. So here it's not that acute, but it's about long-term care where different tools are developed in collaboration with different partners. So who is in this project? So overall, there are 12 PhD students, and we started recruiting actually this year. And the PhD students should start in September this year. And luckily, I found already one PhD student. Most of the others didn't. So that is already something that is quite difficult to find the right people. So overall, there should be a network of 12 PhD students. We have 6 beneficiaries. As you can see here, the whole project is led by the University of Amsterdam. And we have people from Eindhoven University, University of Galloway, the University Hospital in Denmark, in Bonn, and also in Norway, the University of Stavanger is one partner or one beneficiary. And the Swiss partners, they are separate. So we have the University of Applied Science and Arts, Northwestern Switzerland, myself, the University of Zurich, and we have people from the University of Bern. And then we have the associate partners. So associate partners are organizations that don't directly get money, but are still involved. So either in data collection, or in our case, sometimes development of a tool, an app, etc. And they provide the environment to basically assess and test data. And there we have the TU Delft, Tilburg University, the Inselspital in Bern, and the LMU in Munich, where even my doctoral student will be at the LMU in Munich and assess data for his project. So the road to tools for teams. So this was a long way, to be honest. So, and actually we started first talking about applying when I was a postdoc at ETH Zurich, and there back then it was called Teams for Safety. That was the initial idea, and we submitted in 2014, and it got rejected. So we resubmitted 2 years later, the same Teams for Tools, still when I was a postdoc at ETH Zurich, and it got rejected again. Then I was working as a researcher in Northwestern University in Chicago, and there another PI said, hey, let's revise it again. And then it became Tools for Teams. And we submitted again in 2019. It got rejected again. And we resubmitted the Tools for Team in 2021, and it got finally accepted. And I was back then, when it got accepted, I was a senior researcher at ETH Zurich. And of course, because I was not a professor back then, I couldn't be officially the PI. So Gudala Grote, my supervisor at ETH Zurich, was the PI on the project. But since she has a very little involvement in everything, she then agreed, when I at the same time received my Excellenza professorship, that we could transfer everything on my name. So I became the PI of the project, and I could move everything with the support of the psychology department from University of Zurich, could move the whole project to the university from ETH. And that was a little effort from the admin side, but it was very, we got a lot of help, especially also from the grant office. And so now it's under the University of Zurich and not ETH Zurich anymore. And yeah, as I said, this year we started the project, and actually so far just looking for the PhD students. So why bother this project? Why does it make sense, or doesn't it make sense? I think there are big benefits, and of course it's a high risk but also high reward project. And I think for me a big plus is the network. So we are 6 or even more institutions that closely work together, and especially for projects where you need field access. So for myself, having access to hospitals, going there, doing observations, assess data, this network is really crucial. And I think that is one big plus. So we have this network of institutions and hospitals in Europe that could provide data basically for our research. And then for the PhD program in itself, so the PhD student will have regular summer school, winter school once a year. and will be together always with the other 11 PhD students, where they learn, for example, methods very specific to the context, for example. So my PhD student then has a background in working organization psychology, but in these winter and summer schools, he will get insight in the work conditions in hospitals, what are the problems there, and what are the methods, basically. So behavior observation will be a part, because he will use that in his project. And also the PhD student will do so-called secondments. So twice during the 4 years PhD program, he will then visit the LMU in Munich. Will be there for 2 months to assess data, and also he will visit the CAMS in Denmark, where he again also will see how they work there and also assess data. As I said, of course, it's a high risk, and as I told you, we got rejected 3 times, and to be honest, the 4th time I was not believing in it anymore, really. So sometimes I was a bit annoyed, but still went with what they needed, and I started not putting too much effort in it. Because yeah, it is frustrating getting rejected, and especially what was interesting, the first time we got rejected, we had even higher ratings than when we got accepted, actually. So it always depends on the other applications. But still, I think I would do it again, and I think it's a huge opportunity. Of course, the admin part is also quite significant, although I have to say that everything with the agreement between the EU and the SBFI, the grant office was super helpful, and everything went really smooth. The money, yeah, we got the money from the SBFE, as you know, because EU doesn't pay, and this was really a smooth transition, and everyone was super supportive. So there, yeah, big recommendation is really work with your grant office, always CC them or approach them directly. And yeah, that was a huge help. The recruiting part was a bit tricky because we still need to adhere to the EU's rules. So the applicants must not have resided in Switzerland for more than 12 months in the 3 years prior to the date of employment. And luckily for Swiss, I mean, we can recruit in Germany. And the biggest thing was the language problem, because for my project and even for other projects, so the language, the national language is required, because the PhDs need to code and observe in hospitals, need to interact. So for us, German speaking was really a requirement. As I said, for Switzerland, it's probably not that hard, but partners from Denmark or Norway, they had really, or still have, troubles finding people, because they cannot hire people from that are actually living there. So it has to be someone who is fluent in the national language, but didn't live in the country for the last 12 months. So that was a bit a challenge. And I think depending on the project, maybe for other projects, it's fine with English, but for us, since this is really working with local hospitals, where you need the national language, that can be tricky. The other thing that is, maybe a challenge, and I will see when the PhD student starts in September, is to the EU guidelines. So he will have to track his time, and also the salary is a bit different than the other PhD students in my team that have the regular SNF salary, because the EU PhD student will receive actually more money than the SNF. and we'll also have, of course, this network and this summer schools. So this is probably more from a team leader or team management perspective, something that we need to be aware and that I will have to communicate and manage within my team, since everyone is at the end receiving a PhD in psychology, but not, or some get a little bit more money, a little bit more network support for their projects. But that's how it is, and we will see how I can manage this with my team. So that's it from my side, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Professor Schmutz. I will now just stop the recording.